Hi everybody, welcome to another tutorial from Sound for More. In this video we are going to continue our exploration on how to learn ID700. So I'm inside the AUM and as usual I'm loading an instance of ID700. I like also to have a bit of reverb as an effect, so let's choose something like this time adverb from Tone Booster. Okay, perfect. Let's open ID700. Let's move it up a little bit to maximize the window. So we have two sessions, one at the top, one at the bottom, and let's open the controller to see what it sounds like. Really nice. Let's go up an octave. Okay, right. Today we are going to start exploring modulation inside ID700. So let's go to the algorithm. Let's make sure we have our default preset set on. Let's use the algorithm 7 and let's click on oscillator number 1. So on the left side here you see a section called modulation. You actually can see a Ponte modulation here as well on the right. They work exactly, they work in a similar way. The concept is the same, but this modulation on the left is applied overall to the oscillator, while the point modulation works as a modulation, but at a specific point in the envelope, as we'll see in one of the next tutorial. So for this video, we will focus on the overall modulation. Now, when you looked at how modulation works and you learned how to apply it, then you can apply it to other oscillators because it's still applicable, but also to the filter module, to the morph module, the location, all the indexes, even the amplifier has a modulation section. Okay, so the only two that don't have a modulation section are the wave A and wave B, which makes sense as we'll see in future tutorials. So let's stick now to oscillator number 1. The first thing you need to do is to set a source. So here is a source. At the moment it says none, so you click on it and you have different type of category. You have a voice category, an envelope category, and a global category. And of course at the moment it's selected none. So let's start with something simple, like for example the timbre. And what you have to notice is that the selection under voice and also global are modulation which are manual. So you need to do a kind of manual intervention to apply them. So, but let's try the timbre one first. Let's open up the controller. And if I click and hold and move up and down, you should hear some modulation. You don't at the moment, but that's because we have not acted on the multiplier here. So there's no intensity set. And you can see here on the first dot, which is the first point, which is the only one, you can see that as I move up and down on the keyboard, you have differences. You see the point which is moving. Now, depending on where you click on the keyboard, so if you click on the middle, you'll see hardly no variation. If you click at the bottom of the key, you see starting lower. If you click at the top, you see starting higher. How high, how low depends on the multiplier. So the more multiplier you set, the higher the variation will be. And you can go right up to the maximum. Okay, now this is great in terms of applying modulation manually, and indeed you can play like this. But it would be nicer if modulation could be applied by an external source, independent, and that is where these two selection under envelope comes in. So you have a smoothed random selection and a stepped random selection. Both generate random values, but they are different. The stepped one move from one step to the other straight away. This moved one interpolate between one step to the other and therefore create a smooth transition. So let's start with the stepped random Let's click on a note and hold. So as you can see, different steps are randomly generated. So modulation is applied and is going up and down depending on the random value applied. Now the frequency at which the steps are generated depends on the random rates which you see here. So here what it said stepped, this is related to the stepped one, and of course the other one is moved is related to the other, to this moved random modulation, which you will see in a moment. So at the moment the unstepped rate is set every 1 second, so we could reduce that and you'll see variation happening quicker. Interestingly, it sounds like an old computer. And you can create indeed interesting effect, particularly if you make smaller variation and also very fast. Now, you could play like that, but I think it is more interesting to use this moved random, in my opinion, modulation. So let's have a listen just with the rate set to 1 second. Okay, let's reduce the rate. Okay, let's reduce it a touch more. Interestingly, and now see what happens if I synchronize, as we have seen in a previous video, oscillator number 1 to oscillator number 4 in terms of phase. Really interesting. And of course you can even make it more interesting if you go to index 4, in this case, open up effectively the gate and let in oscillator 4 modulating oscillator number 1, as we've seen in previous tutorials. So let's try again. Now check the settings here under MIDI and make sure you have MIDI mode set to MIDI at the moment. And the reason I'm asking you to do that is because you could create some interesting effect. Let me show you. I will hold the C4 here on the AUM keyboard. Then what I will do, I will play some notes here on the controller of ID700, and then I will glide down and listen to the interesting effect. So what you have heard there is that when I was gliding down the notes on the controllers over here, it also affected the C4 note which was applied through the AUM keyboard. And that's an interesting effect, isn't it? If of course you like that. Let's try again. Of course, that impacts all the notes when I'm doing a gliding up and down, but if you don't like that, of course, change your setting to MPE here, and that would be different. Right, let's see what happens if we apply, for example, a higher multiplier. I actually find it more exciting to set the MIDI mode to MIDI, although perhaps in some cases it's difficult to control it, but to control the sound, because when you have done some accidentally gliding up and down, you have then to readjust the sound playing other notes. Okay, I hope you found this tutorial interesting and useful. See you next time. Bye.